Elizabeth walked into the room with a mission, or at least that's what she wanted everyone to think. She leaned into a conversation, framing Lauren as fake, throwing subtle digs meant to rally Yara to her side. But what she didn't realize was that the energy she carried was far louder than her words. Every glance, every pause, every forced laugh was broadcasting more about her than she intended. The irony? While she tried to expose someone else, she ended up leaving herself wide open. The group, the camera, even the audience could see it. Friendships are complicated, even in the best of circumstances. Add jealousy, performance pressure, and a reality TV lens, and suddenly every small interaction feels like a high-stakes game. Elizabeth's attempt to manipulate perception wasn't just risky, it was explosive. Yara and Joy were watching, not just the words but the intent, and Alex, always hovering on the edges of drama, could feel the tension simmering. Each person in this web has history, feelings, and agendas, and one misstep could ripple through everyone, and sometimes roast the wildest moments of 90 Day Fiancé. If you love getting all the behind-the-scenes drama and emotional twists, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your thoughts. Whose side are you on? The room is quiet, but you can almost hear the gears turning in Elizabeth's mind. She's trying to push buttons, trying to control the narrative, but the truth has a way of sneaking out. Lauren isn't just a target, she's a mirror reflecting Elizabeth's insecurities. Libby watches, calculating, silently judging, wondering if Elizabeth realizes just how much she's giving away. And Yara, she's starting to pick up the cracks, the inconsistencies. Joy is watching the energy bounce back and forth, sensing which way the tides will turn. Elizabeth smiles, or maybe it's a grimace. It's hard to tell. She wants a win here. She wants to shape the story. But will her move succeed, or is she about to ignite a chain reaction she can't control? The room holds its breath, and the cameras never blink. Elizabeth's mind is spinning, but she doesn't show it. At least, not fully. On the surface, she's calm, measuring her words, appearing strategic. Beneath it, though, every insecurity, every lingering resentment from past friendships is bubbling. The thing about someone like Elizabeth is she doesn't just gossip, she performs it, trying to control how the story lands. And right now, everyone is watching, whether they know it or not. Lauren, on the other hand, has a different rhythm. She's quiet but alert, holding space for herself while letting the chaos swirl around her. Her confidence isn't about being loud or confrontational, it's about knowing her own worth, even when someone else is spinning narratives to make her look small. That's a hard skill to have when you're surrounded by people who thrive on drama, but it's what keeps her steady. Libby is observing from the sidelines, calculating who she can trust and who she can't. She knows that Elizabeth's push against Lauren isn't just a conversation, it's a test. And the real danger is that Elizabeth's insecurities are leaking. Every subtle critique she throws is revealing more about her own fears, her jealousy, and the need to feel in control. You can almost see the pattern forming. Elizabeth wants to be the center of attention, even if it means bending truth. And everyone around her becomes a mirror reflecting what she's really feeling. Then there's Yara. She's caught in the crossfire, trying to make sense of conflicting messages. On one hand, she wants to trust Elizabeth, but on the other, she's sensing the manipulations beneath the surface. Joy notices too, and she's weighing loyalty against what she knows is real. It's a delicate balance. One wrong comment, and the social house of cards could crumble. This is what makes reality TV so compelling. You see behavior stripped down to its rawest form. Insecurity versus confidence, jealousy versus admiration, manipulation versus honesty. Elizabeth's attempt to frame Lauren is a masterclass in self-sabotage. She's trying to shape the story, but she's also writing herself into a corner. Every smile, every friendly remark, every subtle shade is being processed by everyone in the room and everyone watching at home. The pressure isn't just social, it's psychological. Elizabeth wants control, but control is fleeting when every move is magnified, analyzed, and recorded. Lauren doesn't play the game the same way, and that contrast is exposing everything Elizabeth thought she could hide. Libby, Yara, Joy, they all see it. Even Alex senses the tension. And here's the kicker. Elizabeth doesn't even realize she's teetering. What she thinks is a power move is actually a spotlight on her own vulnerabilities. Will she pivot and save face, or will her insecurities dictate the next explosive moment? The room is tense, but it's subtle, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Every glance, every laugh, every pause carries weight. Female friendships in this environment aren't just bonds. They're battlegrounds. Elizabeth wants to shape alliances, but group dynamics are rarely predictable. You can plan all you want, but a single misstep in tone or timing can reveal everything. Yara and Joy are the quiet observers in this setup. Yara senses Elizabeth's maneuvers, the way she tries to pull people in with shared frustrations. Joy notices the patterns too, the way Elizabeth frames conversations to make herself the moral center, the protector, the one who knows the truth. It's a tactic designed to look like caring, but in reality, it's about influence. Lauren stands apart, calm and intentional, letting the tension swirl around her. She doesn't need to dominate the conversation because she knows how to project strength quietly. This contrast highlights Elizabeth's overperforming behavior. Every attempt Elizabeth makes to control perception only exposes her insecurities further. Then comes the subtle power play. Elizabeth drops hints, little facts meant to sway Yara. She paints Lauren as someone who says one thing but does another, trying to force Yara into her camp. But Yara isn't naive. She catches inconsistencies, reads between the lines, and begins forming her own judgment. Joy nudges her subtly, reinforcing that perception isn't always reality. Meanwhile, Libby sits back, evaluating. She's been in the mix long enough to know the patterns. Elizabeth's attempts to manipulate the group are textbook. She's creating tension to feel control. But control is an illusion when the group isn't on your side. Each person processes the same words differently, and alliances shift quietly under the radar. The subtle digs, the compliments wrapped in critique, the strategic friendly comments, these are the tools Elizabeth uses, and they're effective only if the group buys in. But group dynamics have a life of their own. Trust, jealousy, admiration, and envy interact like volatile chemicals. One spark, and the reaction is immediate and messy. Yara's internal dialogue becomes a battleground. She wants to believe in Elizabeth's sincerity, but she can't ignore the red flags. Lauren's calm observation becomes a silent counterbalance, showing that authenticity often outweighs theatrics. The contrast is stark. Elizabeth is loud and insecure, Lauren is measured and self-aware, and the rest of the group becomes the mirror reflecting both approaches. The room feels like it's holding its breath. Every word, every smirk, every gesture has consequences. Elizabeth thinks she's orchestrating the drama, but the group has its own agency. Every alliance she tries to engineer risks collapsing in on her. It started with a comment about an outfit. On the surface, harmless. But in the context of Elizabeth, Lauren, and Yara's tangled web, it became a spark waiting for fuel. Elizabeth repeats what she claims Lauren said about Yara's fashion, framing it as proof that Lauren is fake. The tone, the delivery, even the choice of words. They all carry weight. In this environment, a simple remark can ripple through friendships, igniting jealousy, suspicion, and defensiveness. Yara listens carefully, trying to separate fact from interpretation. She knows that in groups like this, comments are rarely innocent. Every compliment, every critique, and every passing joke comes loaded with context. Lauren, on the other hand, isn't oblivious. She's aware that her initial remarks about Yara's bold style might have been misread or overanalyzed. She knows admiration often comes disguised as shade when insecurity is involved. Elizabeth's framing is strategic but sloppy. She wants Yara on her side, positioning herself as the protector who knows what's really happening. But her over-explanation, her repeated insistence, only amplifies her own insecurities. The more she pushes the narrative, the more transparent her intentions become. Libby notices, Joy notices. Even Alex, who isn't fully immersed in the drama, can feel the tension tighten like a spring ready to snap. The fascinating part is the psychology behind these interactions. When someone comments on another's style, they're revealing more than taste. They're revealing their own lens of comparison, envy, or admiration. Lauren's original remarks were likely rooted in a mix of awe and subtle jealousy. She admires Yara's confidence, but struggles with feeling she can't match that boldness. Elizabeth, in contrast, weaponizes perceived slight, turning it into social leverage. Yara processes all of this, caught between wanting to trust Elizabeth and sensing the inconsistencies in her story. Joy acts as a quiet stabilizer, noticing the subtle manipulations and raising internal flags. The energy in the room is thick, heavy with unsaid judgments, and every participant is deciding who's trustworthy, who's performing, and who might fold under pressure. By now, it's clear that words aren't just words. They're tools of influence. Elizabeth's attempt to spotlight Lauren backfires because the audience, the group, and even Yara can see the cracks in her strategy. She's trying to shape perception, but it's shaping her own reality instead. The drama escalates, not because of what was said, but because of how it's being handled. The tension didn't dissipate. Instead, it shifted, moving into the quieter corners of conversation, where mediation should have lived, but rarely does in a group like this. Elizabeth tried to play peacemaker, stepping in with what she called guidance. She framed it as concern, as protection, telling Yara to be cautious around Lauren. On paper, it sounded reasonable. In reality, it was another opportunity to manipulate the narrative. Yara's instincts told her to pause. She knew Elizabeth's advice was a mixture of truth, exaggeration, and projection. Joy noticed too, quietly weighing the tone, the intent, the subtle nudges meant to make Yara doubt Lauren. Every word was layered and every reaction mattered. The energy in the room felt taut, like a string pulled just a little too tight. Meanwhile, Lauren was navigating her own approach. She didn't need to defend herself aggressively. She let the comments roll, observing body language and tone, noticing inconsistencies, and gathering information. Her calmness contrasted sharply with Elizabeth's overperforming concern, revealing the cracks in Elizabeth's strategy. The group dynamic wasn't just about conversation, it was about reading signals, picking up on subtle manipulations, and deciding who deserved trust. Elizabeth doubled down in her attempts to guide. She shared stories, framed past interactions, and emphasized perceived threats, trying to create a wedge. But her effort wasn't seamless. Libby, who has been in these dynamics long enough to spot patterns, noticed the overextension, the tiny slips that betrayed Elizabeth's true intentions. It was as if Elizabeth was so focused on controlling outcomes that she didn't realize she was leaving herself exposed. The psychology here is fascinating. Attempts to mediate often reveal more about the mediator than the conflict itself. When someone steps in to protect a friend but has a personal stake in the narrative, it's easy for authenticity to blur with manipulation. Elizabeth's actions were a textbook case. Under the guise of concern, she was performing influence, subtly shaping the group's perception, while her insecurities quietly leaked through every phrase. Alex tried to step in, offering perspective, but even his presence couldn't fully redirect the tension. Mediation in this room was less about resolution and more about signaling. Every comment carried weight, every smile or frown sent signals, and everyone's watching. In the midst of it, alliances were forming, dissolving, and reforming faster than any calm conversation could handle. Then it happened. Lauren spoke up. Not aggressively, not to attack, but with an honesty that cut through the tension like a knife. She admitted her feelings about Yara, her envy of her bold style, and even how certain comments may have come across as shade. She didn't sugarcoat it, but she also didn't throw anyone under the bus. It was the kind of admission that forces everyone in the room to pause, reassess, and confront reality. Elizabeth froze, caught off guard. The person she thought she could manipulate with a narrative of fake friends was now owning her vulnerabilities in a way that Elizabeth hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just confession, it was a mirror, reflecting the insecurities Elizabeth had been trying to hide. For a moment, the room was silent, charged with the kind of tension that makes every heartbeat feel loud. Libby watched with subtle amusement, recognizing that the power dynamic had shifted. Elizabeth's strategy had relied on creating fear and doubt, but honesty has a way of undermining manipulation. Yara's eyes widened slightly, processing Lauren's confession, sensing both the courage behind it and the complexity it introduced. Joy leaned in, calculating how this revelation might change alliances, how the perceived threat might now seem more human, more vulnerable, and paradoxically more trustworthy. The psychology here is layered. Admitting vulnerability, especially in a high-stakes, high-drama environment, is risky. It exposes emotions, makes one seem human, and can even invite attacks. But it also establishes credibility and authenticity, something Elizabeth was lacking in her attempt to frame Lauren. Every subtle nuance, every pause, every inflection mattered, and it reshaped the social map of the group in real time. Elizabeth tried to recover, speaking quickly, laughing a little too hard, adding extra context, but it only amplified the tension. Her words now sounded reactive, defensive, and performative. Lauren's confession had taken the wind out of Elizabeth's sails, revealing that overplaying a narrative can backfire when the audience and peers recognize authenticity. Alex, standing nearby, observed the shift silently. He noticed the way Elizabeth's confidence wavered, and how Lauren's honesty commanded attention without demanding it. The room had changed subtly yet irreversibly. Alliances were now in flux, perceptions were shifting, and the seeds of doubt about Elizabeth's narrative were firmly planted. The night shifted, moving from strategic conversations to raw emotion. At the bar, the energy was almost tangible, thick with unspoken judgments and quiet anticipation. Yara and Joy arrived, unsure whether to confront, observe, or just survive the social minefield. Every glance, every smirk, every side-eye was amplified in that setting. Elizabeth thought she controlled the narrative, but the bar is a stage where subtle power plays meet unpredictable reactions. Elizabeth tried to keep her cool, leaning into casual conversation, sprinkling in her carefully crafted warnings about Lauren. She positioned herself as protector and friend, but the tension betrayed her. Lauren, ever composed, entered the scene like a calm storm. She carried herself with measured confidence, making each interaction feel intentional and controlled. Her presence immediately shifted the energy, and Elizabeth's cracks began to show. The exchanges were short, loaded, and layered. Yara, processing both sides, felt pulled in different directions. Joy could sense the growing anxiety in Elizabeth, and even Alex, standing nearby, recognized the subtle war of influence taking place. The bar, with its low lights and ambient chatter, became a crucible, forcing each person's true intentions to surface. Elizabeth doubled down on her narrative, trying to spin past comments, frame alliances, and subtly discredit Lauren in Yara's eyes. But Lauren's calm acknowledgement of her earlier feelings, the admission of envy and admiration, acted as a counterbalance, exposing Elizabeth's overreach. Every attempt Elizabeth made to control the situation backfired, revealing more insecurity than strategy. The emotional stakes climbed as tension turned to confrontation. Words that were meant to protect friendships were interpreted as manipulative. Every smile, every nervous laugh, every slight hesitation was noted, evaluated, and cataloged by everyone in the room. The room felt ready to erupt at any moment, and the smallest misstep could tip the balance. It wasn't just about conflict anymore, it was about perception, reputation, and trust. Elizabeth's strategy of framing Lauren now seemed fragile, and her attempts to influence Yara only highlighted her desperation. Lauren's honesty and composure contrasted sharply with Elizabeth's reactive energy, making the differences between authenticity and performance impossible to ignore. The aftermath hit hard. The bar's energy, once tense, now felt fragile, like a balloon stretched too thin. Everyone was processing the storm that had just passed, weighing words, actions, and unspoken intentions. Elizabeth's attempt to frame Lauren had not only failed, but backfired, leaving her reputation exposed. People weren't just questioning her words, they were questioning her integrity, her motives, and her ability to navigate relationships without drama. Yara and Joy were recalibrating. Yara, cautious but curious, tried to separate facts from interpretation, while Joy assessed loyalty and authenticity with a subtle intensity. Every glance exchanged between them was layered with judgment. Meanwhile, Lauren's measured honesty had shifted perceptions. Her admission about envy, admiration, and misinterpreted comments didn't just clear the air, it illuminated Elizabeth's overreach and exposed her insecurities for everyone to see. Libby, observing from the sidelines, knew the impact would be long-lasting. She recognized how public missteps like these resonate in small groups and under a reality TV lens. Elizabeth had tried to control the narrative, but the fallout proved that manipulation rarely holds when authenticity is on display. Every participant in that room had now realigned their perception, and the balance of influence had shifted subtly but irrevocably. Alex tried to mediate, but even his efforts couldn't fully contain the ripple effects. He sensed the fractures forming and the subtle realignment of alliances. Everyone was recalculating, asking themselves, who is trustworthy, who performs for attention, and who carries genuine intentions? In this environment, reputation isn't just social, it's survival. A single misjudgment can reverberate across every relationship, every future interaction, every camera lens. The psychological weight of these dynamics is intense. Elizabeth's attempt to cast Lauren as fake inadvertently revealed her own insecurities, highlighting a key principle. In social ecosystems, control is often an illusion, and perceived influence can quickly turn against the manipulator. Lauren's calm, honest approach provided a stark contrast, demonstrating the power of authenticity in high-stakes social situations. And yet, despite all this clarity, the fallout was far from over. Tensions remained, alliances were still fluid, and Elizabeth's next moves would be watched carefully. Every word she says now carries double meaning, every gesture scrutinized, every smile questioned. The room had changed. The group had shifted. And in the world of 90 Day Fiancé, no misstep goes unnoticed.